I have the C-SPAN video of Queen Elizabeth II. This is explosive. I'm going to slow it down. I've had long talks with a lot of people today. I had world experts, including none other than the United Kingdom, top criminal institution in the United Kingdom. This was sent to me, as well as top United States of America world experts, bar none. It was sent to me. I understand the significance of it, but apparently none of you do. And that's because we're all institutionalized in Canada. I've been working at this a tremendously long time. This from the United Kingdom. This in real, absolute truth, brought to you by a recording from the United States of America, none other than C-SPAN. I want you to listen to the entirety. I'm going to chop it up into the points that are important to you. What the UN Charter is, the significance of Queen Elizabeth's words. We're going to pause, talk about it. But first everybody, hear this introduction. And I've tagged, well, not tagged, but I've listed Chief Justice Wagner, the RCMP, and the Canadian Armed Forces. You all swore an oath to Queen Elizabeth II. That's what you all state clearly all the time. All the time. Well, what if I told you what Queen Elizabeth says and what Canada does are two different things? What if what Queen Elizabeth II addressed in 2010, absolutely 10 minutes of it, you're going to hear the full video. I will pause it to explain things you've never heard before. We're going to start with the introduction to this video shot in 2010 at the UN, 53 years after Queen Elizabeth's absence. First, hear the introductory words, and then I'm going to pause it again.
As Queen Elizabeth addressed the United Nations General Assembly, it was her first speech at the UN since 1957. The Queen talks about efforts to curb terrorism and address climate change.
Remember this, everybody watching this video. Chief Justice Wagner, the RCMP, and the Canadian Armed Forces. You all swear an oath to Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II. They just told you, and this is from 2010, I can't cut the video from the United States of America C-SPAN. Queen Elizabeth II, they said, talks about, again, one more time.
In New York City, Britain's Queen Elizabeth addressed the United Nations General Assembly. It was her first speech at the UN since 1957. The Queen talks about efforts to curb terrorism and address climate change. This is
20-minute video entirely shot. They just said her efforts to curb terrorism and deal with climate change. You're going to hear her full speech, which does not mention terrorism, and absolutely never once is going to mention anything about climate change. Queen Elizabeth is going to give you, in her words, as it was her, as recorded by the United States of America, C-SPAN, in its entirety. You will hear, I will pause when she hits those issues she talks about that are not, that I repeat, are not what the General Assembly says they're to be. That's not what she says, and you will clearly hear the video. At the end, we're going to readdress it. Did you hear her ever talk about terrorism or climate change? Now I'm going to skip ahead to the video. It's 20 minutes. Queen Elizabeth II gets her chance to speak and give her speech to all the nations of the world. You're going to hear her address everybody as Queen of 16 nations.
Make us confront tree.
I'm just going to get to the point. Okay. Now we're going to get into the former president of the UN. He's no longer the president now. Listen to what he says. I will pause certain elements of that too. Ready?
Your Majesty, Your Royal Highness, Mr. President, Excellencies, we are honored by your presence, Your Majesty. In a changing and churning world, you are an anchor for our age. Your reign spans the decades, from the challenges of the Cold War to the threat of global warming. From the Beatles to Beckham, from the television to Twitter. Through the years, you have traveled the world and met its people. You have become a living symbol of grace, constancy, and dignity. Your Majesty, in 1957, you first visited this chamber when the United Nations was still young. Over half a century ago, you told the General Assembly that the future would be shaped by more than the formal bonds that unite us. It would be shaped by the strength of our devotion. Devotion to the hopes and great ideals of the UN Charter.
Pause. By the hopes of the UN Charter. Now, he spoke of climate change. That's the only time you hear it. He says her 1957 address about the UN Charter, which nobody reads. Nobody reads the Charter. I listen to people talk about the UN. This is the binding power in the world. The absolute law is the UN Charter. Every nation in the world signed the UN Charter. There are enshrined human rights inside the UN Charter no nation gets to get away with. That's the power of the UNSC. Remember, everybody, Queen Elizabeth is queen from UK and 16 countries. UK is a UNSC Permanent 5 member. You just heard the president remind that it's about the UN Charter because that's absolute law in this entire world by the UNSC. It's important.
And prosperity. With you at the helm, the United Kingdom and the Commonwealth have contributed immensely to the United Nations. Today, the 4 largest providers of UN peacekeeping troops are Commonwealth countries. Around the world, you are working with us to foster development, advance human rights, and promote global security. In September, we will gather to advance this mission further still by pushing for progress towards the Millennium Development Goals. This is the blueprint of the world.
Millennial Development Goals, everybody. Millennial Development Goals. Not sustainable goals, not any Green New Deal, not Agenda 2021, not Agenda 2030, Millennial Development Goals. What is Millennial Development Goals? You're going to hear Queen Elizabeth II talk about Millennial Development Goals. Do you know what Millennial Development Goals are and where they came from, which is not present anywhere in the UN General Assembly today in non-binding agreements? Millennium Development Goals are for the youth of tomorrow to have affordable living, to make sure we never drive the cost of living, which is represented in the UN Charter of 1945. Did you know that, Canadians, that in the UN Charter 1945, it is illegal worldwide to drive the costs of the people so astronomically high that they can't afford a basic living themselves by the sweat of their brow? It is enshrined in the UN Charter 1945, last time ever repeated here because Queen Elizabeth II, Chief Justice Wagner, RCMP, and Canadian Armed Forces. Did you know that that is what Queen Elizabeth II mandates of all of you? And you're going to hear it in her own words. Millennial Development Goals. Show me that in Canada right now. Oh, you don't. You have Sustainable Development Goals. Oh, you have cities driving the cost of living so high that the youth of tomorrow can't afford a place to live. They can't even buy a place. You have spit all over Queen Elizabeth II. You're going to hear her words more than 10 years ago in her real words that had nothing to do with that introduction by the General Assembly. So Chief Justice Wagner, RCMP, and Canadian Armed Forces, you say you swore an oath to the Queen. You're acting in the Queen's behalf. We're going to go through her entire speech here. For the first time, Canada sees her speech as it really was. There's the video. I haven't edited nothing. I couldn't. This is from the United States of America and the United Kingdom's top criminal law institution, who loves Her Majesty. Best minds in the world. Two of 5 most powerful nations in the world, giving absolute truth.
Leaders to save lives of the poor and vulnerable, to combat hunger and disease, to promote gender equality, and to provide education, opportunity, and decent work to billions of people. We will once again heed your call and devote our full strength to the ideals of our charter and to realizing a better world for all.
Read the charter.
Majesty,
half of what he just said isn't in there. You're going to hear from Her Majesty.
To the United Kingdom and the Commonwealth, to the United Nations and our common values, we say thank you and welcome. We wish you continued good health, and we are happy to have you here today. Thank you very much.
I have the honor to invite Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II to address the General Assembly.
Mr. President, Secretary General, members of the General Assembly. I believe I was last here in 1957. Since then, I have traveled widely and met many leaders, ambassadors, and statesmen from around the world. I address you today as Queen of 16 United Nations member states and as head of the Commonwealth of 54 countries. I have also witnessed great change, much of it for the better, particularly in science and technology and in social attitudes. Remarkably, many of these sweeping advances have come about not because of governments, committee resolutions, or central directives, although all these have played a part, but instead because millions of people around the world have wanted them. For the United Nations, these subtle yet significant changes in people's approach to leadership and power might have foreshadowed failure and demise. Instead, the United Nations has grown and prospered by responding and adapting to those shifts. But also, many important things have not changed. The aims and values which inspire the United Nations Charter endure. To promote
United Nations Charter endure. Read the charter, people. That's what she says there. Do you hear anything about terrorism so far? Or global need for protect the environment?
peace, security, and justice. To relieve and remove the blight of hunger, poverty, and disease, and to protect the rights and liberties of every citizen. The achievements of the United Nations are remarkable.
Protect the rights of every citizen. Every citizen. Read the UN Charter. That's what I say to Chief Justice Wagner, RCMP, and the Canadian Armed Forces. Read the Charter, 1945. Find out what's absolute in international law and what your Queen Elizabeth II is telling you here. the only last address in the UN, because she's not allowed in there. By way of colonialism, it's illegal.
When I was first here, there were just 3 United Nations operations overseas. Now over 120,000 men and women are deployed in 26 missions across the world. You have helped to reduce conflict. You have offered humanitarian assistance to millions of people affected by natural disasters and other emergencies. And you have been deeply committed to tackling the effects of poverty in many parts of the world. But so much remains to be done. Former Secretary General Dag Hammarskjöld once said that constant attention by a good nurse may be just as important as a major operation by a surgeon. Good nurses get better with practice. Sadly, the supply of patients never ceases. This September, leaders will meet to agree how to achieve the Millennium Development Goals, when each nation will have its own distinctive contribution to make.
Millennium Development Goals. You will find what that is. Nothing that Canada is doing right now is anything by the last address from the Queen of the UK that you all swear to. You all swear to when I talk about Chief Justice Wagner, the RCMP, and the Canadian Armed Forces. If you don't know what that means, what that's defined as, clearly it's all about housing affordability, standard of living versus cost of living, represented in the 1945 Charter. Have you still, when are we going to hear from what the General Assembly says her address was supposed to be? They introduced it at the start of the video. They say, listen, she's going to talk about the environment and she's going to talk about terrorism. Haven't heard any of that yet.
New challenges have also emerged, which have tested this organization as much as its member states. One such is the struggle against terrorism. Another challenge is climate change, where careful account must be taken of the risks faced by smaller, more vulnerable nations, many of them from the Commonwealth.
There's your terrorism and climate change risks from the Commonwealth. Who are the Commonwealth? The colonial countries. The colonial countries. It gets better, everybody.
Mr. President, I started by talking about leadership. I have much admiration for those who have the talent to lead, particularly in public service and in diplomatic life. And I congratulate you, your colleagues, and your predecessors on your many achievements. It has perhaps always been the case that the waging of peace is the hardest form of leadership of all. I know of no single formula for success, but over the years, I have observed that some attributes of leadership are universal and are often about finding ways of encouraging people to combine their efforts, their talents, their insights, their enthusiasm and their inspiration to work together. Since I addressed you last, the Commonwealth too has grown vigorously to become a group of nations representing nearly 2 billion people. It gives its wholehearted support to the significant contributions to the peace and stability of the world made by the United Nations and its agencies. Last November, when I opened the Commonwealth Heads of Government meeting in Trinidad and Tobago, I told the delegates that the Commonwealth had the opportunity to lead. Today, I offer you the same message. For over 6 decades, the United Nations has helped to shape the international response to global dangers. The challenge now is to continue to show this clear and convening leadership while not losing sight of your ongoing work to secure the security, prosperity, and dignity of our fellow human beings. When people in 53 years from now look back on us, they will doubtless view many of our practices as old-fashioned. But it is my hope that when judged by future generations, our sincerity, our willingness to take a lead, and our determination to do the right thing will stand the test of time. In my lifetime, the United Nations has moved from being a high-minded aspiration to being a real force for common good. That of itself has been a signal achievement. But we are not gathered here to reminisce. In tomorrow's world, we must all work together as hard as ever if we are truly to be United Nations.
Out of that entire speech, the focus was on two words where they cut off the rest of what she said. The Commonwealth brought those. The colonial nations brought all those problems to the world. That's real history out of Queen Elizabeth's mouth. They don't talk about millennial development goals. They don't talk about actual Charter, UN 1945. None of you have read it. Not a one, which is international binding law. Absolute, you'll find enshrined human rights no nation is allowed to breach. You don't hear about what's in the Charter cemented for the first time in world history. Queen Elizabeth is not allowed to address the UN. She was allowed 2 times, and she had to revert to the promise of the Charter, which ends colonialism. Absolutely. Enshrined in international law. Those old powers are not allowed. And you heard out of her words, the Commonwealth caused those problems, as did all the colonials. Right out of her mouth, reading a speech. She was reading her speech, not what everybody tried to publish. Cut a minute, cut this, cut that. You heard it in entirely. Entirely. Look up Millennial Development Goals. Has nothing to do with Agenda 2021. Nothing to do with Agenda 30. Has nothing to do with UN Sustainable Development Goals. Queen Elizabeth's speech went in the garbage can. They printed off for over 10 years a minute 30 seconds of what they cut up and got rid of all the bread and butter because she didn't follow suit. Canada doesn't follow suit. Everything she said in that speech, Canada isn't doing. Look at Ontario, look at British Columbia, look at all the major cities. Does that reflect Millennial Development Goals? And read it, everybody. It's represented in your 1945 Charter. Canada doesn't follow any of that. RCMP don't follow any of the UN Charter on the human rights. Did you see how she said in that speech, regardless of differences or people's views, why would you be imprisoning people who don't want to go along with what you believe? And you use health. Use health. I can show you who's usurped the health laws in Canada in the name of Queen Elizabeth II with zero authority from Queen Elizabeth II. Our Canadian politicians don't follow anything rolled out absolutely by Queen Elizabeth II. They never have, they never will. She addressed the UN. You can go back at a very much younger black and white version of Queen Elizabeth II in the old videos. I watched it. 1957, her address. She was put up there to make the address. League of Nations is gone. Go along with the UN Charter. But now, the ugly age of Axis powers has usurped the power of the Queen and is bringing it back alive today. Canada is becoming an Axis power against the United States of America, the former Soviet Union, which is the Russian Federation today, against the UK, against France, and against China. That's reality. NWO, Canadians, we are part of the NWO. We're the rogue UN state perpetrating this. You heard the video in its entirety. The minute 31 that was presented and is presented all over YouTube, all over everywhere, from that time to even now, is all sliced and cut from that full speech, the only one in existence from the United States of America, archived with the highest law institution, criminal law institution of the UK, given to me to share with all of you. Thank you. That's my video. Don't know what else to say, everybody.